Hi, I'm Damon. I'm going to be talking about, I thought it'd be an interesting problem. I have never used Apache Beam in healthcare. I come from a healthcare background, but I thought this was an interesting use case of it, a situation I ran into in a hospital long ago. Um, and so before I get into it, I'll just kind of mention my background a bit. I was a pharmacist, but now I work for a Google Cloud partner, doing mostly data engineering stuff. Do work in API integration, building our own gRPC APIs in Kubernetes. I hope to apply this to healthcare one day because I thought that would be interesting. But here I am. So what is the problem that we are presented with? Particularly with drug allergies, that might be kind of small. We are very concerned when someone has a drug allergy that they would be presenting with symptoms that are very life-threatening. You may or may not know someone who has allergies. You may have them yourself. And as we are taking care of these patients, we want to know that they've had these experiences so we know not to repeat them. Here's an array of symptoms. It's from Very Well. There's one of them that is very important that isn't listed there. A bit of trivia. Can anyone guess the first recorded symptom of a drug allergy ever recorded in literature was 1933? It's not on the slide, actually. It should be. It was vomiting, believe it or not. I thought it would be hives. But it's very, that is an actual one of the symptoms. But anyway, so why it's interesting is because according to one study, about 1.6% of patients in a given year will present with severe anaphylactic shock. 30% of that 1.6 are drug allergies. It's something we take very, very seriously. And so when it comes to allergies, and thankfully in this country, 95% of hospitals are using electronic medical records. There's very robust coding of those systems. We do not allow free text, thankfully. But there was a situation I worked in a hospital where the coding of allergies, and I'll get to what that means later, was not performed, and it was done via free text. So what that meant is patient presented to the hospital and the nurse would ask, okay, so tell me what you're allergic to. And they would literally type that free text. And the danger of that is that, yeah, text is machine readable, but these systems are not robust enough, definitely not machine learning, to guess that that misspelling is ibuprofen, for example, or acetaminophen, or some kind of drug that would then, when somebody orders that for the patient, say, hey, guess what? Patient's allergic to this. And it does happen. I've run it in my own practice in pharmacy where a patient was allergic and the doctor didn't know, and I had to say, hey, guess what? Did you know? And it really helps. So so this is kind of an example, and I actually seen this before where you have this misspelling. Do you notice right here? Ibuprofens, that is misspelled. And the situation that I ran into and my colleagues, we actually had to go by hand, one by one, through every patient chart. It was like 10,000 of them, and recode those into the correct drug, what that was. The technology wasn't robust at that time to be able to go through this. And so these are not real patients. I should say that because I'm being recorded. I'll lose my license. These are not real patients. I made it all up. I've faked it all. But it can present as a semi-realistic scenario. And if you're not in healthcare, I think industries as a whole have lurking in databases free text of some sort that you want to match or sort through or do some interesting things with. So I think this problem is applicable on a larger level. And so the goal of what we want to do is we want to take that free text, which is essentially a comma delimited string, and code it into what the drug is. And what do I mean by coding? I'm going to show you in a bit. There's coding standards of many kinds of medication conditions. And one that I used here is SNOMED. And SNOMED is a international consortium of standardizing medical terminology. And so what that means is that if I happen to have, you know, with the virus that's going around, I can actually have a code for that assigned to my chart. So if I happen to go to another country, that's the same code. It's all an international standard. So I happened to, this was the first time I used Go for Apache Beam. I thought, you know, it'd be interesting to give it a try. And what's really convenient about Go with BigQuery, which was where I happen to have the data stored, is it automatically parses it into the struct. Who here has worked with Go? Nobody? Anybody? No one? Hi, you're my friend. Anyway, so what's really cool about Go is when you read the data, it automatically knows, you know, how to parse it into your data structure. You can see here, it's a pipe delimited data structure. On the left, we have the medical record number, starts with an M, and then the string of drug names, and then it automatically fills that MRN, and then raw, I call it raw allergies for lack of a better term, which is just a string. And so we want to take those raw allergies and then actually generate codes with that. And that's this database right here. It's called SNOMED. That's the website there, snomed.org. And so that code, 3726 something, whatever, is the code for a drug called ceftriaxone. It's an antibiotic. I hope anyone in this room has to use it, but that is the same code for whatever that is in Japanese or Arabic or whatever it is. So it's a way that we can standardize medical information across the globe. But we're working with text, so we have to do that. And so I can take that data structure and code that into the coded struct that I created here, MRN, and the concept ID. That's what it's called in SNOMED terminology. And that's a very simple, you see this in your Java implementation, your Python implementation. You take a P collection and then you can perform an operation on it. In Go, it happens to look like this, where I have for every element of the patient, I'm going to emit the term and the medical record number, so that the term, which is the first one, will be the string key. And then here it is. I apply it to the Pardue method in Beam, the Go implementation for the P collection of patients that I read from BigQuery. And so now that I have that P collection, I need to do the same for the set of drug terms that I get from SNOMED. And so I happen to be using, I can't publish it because and it's a free license if you're really interested. I hope you're not, because it's kind of boring. Anyway, you sign up and you can download this database and put it into your own private data structure, data based on BigQuery if you want. And so you can get the drug names and then you can loop through it as you do any other Pardue method and get that. So now we have the allergies of the patient and the key drugs. And so here's a really, this is where the magic happens, is in this method called code group by key. And I was really pleasantly surprised how lightweight this was in Go. I had tried this in Java and it took me like a week to figure out. I'm just not very versed in Java. And what was nice is that, that's not many familiar with Go, but what's very interesting is that you apply a Pardue and let me see if I can, my voice will project as I'm playing here. This is really interesting because it's a pointer to a primitive. And so if there's not a match, that's going to be nil or return false when you're applying that method. And that's how you're able to then emit data where there are matching string values of these two data sets. And so then what results is then, I'm going to kind of loop ahead, I'll go back to that slide, is you have the MRN of the patient and then the actual concept ID, the code from SNOMED of what they were allergic to. And so the problem that I ran into, though, is that with this method, it's an exact string match. And what I would like to know and figure out, and thanks to my friend somewhere. Anyway, I was talking with somebody earlier. Then there wasn't really a fuzzy matching with this method right here. Code group by key it was an exact match. And I think the real challenge is in matching something like this, where you have the misspelling of ibuprofens. And obviously in the SNOMED dictionary, thankfully, that's properly spelled. And so that would be, nice to do. So it's an interesting then probably to go a subsequent iteration of this is to then do maybe partitioning and using as a side input to get a score of that match, and maybe use the highest score to match that. But what I thought was kind of cool, so this was the first time I used Go for Apache Beam, and this is the first time I ran it in Kubernetes. Who here has worked with Kubernetes? I have more friends? Okay, I have more friends. Okay. So it's neat. You just, you can configure, you containerize your pipeline, and you can run it as a job in Kubernetes. You can configure it any old way. I happen to use Scaffold from the Scaffold. I don't know why I'm looking at you. Helm, it's kind of neat. And you just run it, and it'll type the output and do whatever you need to do. So that was really convenient. And so yeah, so I publicized the repo if you're interested, and we'll see where this takes me. I think this was like a really short talk. I only spoke for a minute. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Or anyone going to use Go now? For
what was your experience with the Go?
Yeah, so this was so I first, in exploring Apache Beam, I used Python, and then I was a little bit nervous to use that with the whole 2.73 issue that was going on at that time. So I used Java, and I'm just, I don't know, just me. Java's not my favorite language. But using Go, this took me no time at all. I was so surprised how lightweight this was, and things that I knew took me forever to manufacture in Java. I was like, what? It just did it? Oh my gosh, even side inputs were so lightweight, and I didn't use any side inputs here, maybe in a subsequent iteration. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised how quick it was to develop in this. Yeah. So I highly recommend just give it a try. Obviously, not on a project you want to use in production yet, but yeah. So yeah, cool. Yeah, interesting. So yes.
Yeah, so how exactly does
Good question. Yeah. So I think oh yes, yeah, good. Yeah, right. The question was why would I use Apache Beam over other types of competing? Is that a question? Yeah. What attracts me to Apache Beam is the parallelization of work, and what I like per se with Google Cloud is that I get data flow out of the box, and it will auto scale for me depending on the workload. The data flow doesn't, it was actually quite slow. I tried data flow with Go, and that's why I tried it on Kubernetes. But I imagine as the SDK becomes more developed, that is obviously data flow is a target runtime for that. So I hope I answered your question. Yeah, I think I generally find, at least in the Google Cloud world, data flow compared to, there's so many things with the word data proc, which is, I believe, I don't have much experience with Spark, am I correct? Yeah. The difference I noticed of those two technologies is the auto scaling, it does exist with Spark, with Dataproc, but it's kind of alpha or beta at this point. But Dataflow, it's already built in and stable in the technology. And I've actually seen clients in my company come to us and say, why is our bill thousands of dollars? Because they didn't realize that you don't get auto scaling. And with Dataflow, there is, and I found definitely a cost benefit with that. So that's what attracts me to Apache Beam because of the data flow and those kinds of things. Yeah.